Hello and welcome along people to another one of my little videos. My name is Mert Walsh. They say you shouldn't meet your heroes. Well, recently while I was at Croft, I met two of mine. In the world of sport, some names just go together. Torval and Dean, ice skating. In the world of rallying, Colin McRae, Nicky Grist. But in the world of F1 sidecars, two legendary names definitely go together. Steve Webster, MBE, and Tony Hewitt, MBE. Join me after the intro, where I go and have a chat with them. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Webster and Tony Hewitt.
Hello.
Take two. So sorry about that, and thanks ever so much for your time, gents, here today, and it's most appreciated. What got you into sidecar racing?
I think when I look back, like I was always been involved with sidecars. Really, always been like brought up as a child in the paddock. As my father used to race, so I've always been around the racing sort of scene. And my father raced sidecars both on the grass and the road, so it was inevitable that some time or other I was going to end up either getting over the handlebars or being a passenger or just being involved with the sidecars because it was just such a big part of my life. Yeah. And
you never fancied being a passenger?
Not really. No, I got when we started racing. My brother, my father, and myself, we built the sidecar between us. So I think my father got into it once he knew I was going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
He backed us and helped us, and the only reason I got to be the driver was because both when my brother and myself went to an old airfield testing, it was I didn't miss as many gears as my brother, so it never, I was going to be the rider and Kev was the passenger because he missed more gears, so that's what decided the roles there. And I think I only ever really got on as a passenger once later on in my career, and I vowed I'd never do it again because it frightened the bloody life out of me. Yeah.
Right.
I take my hat off to the passengers now. Yeah, I got a lot more respect for them.
So was it when you jumped on as a passenger? Was it the not controlling the throttle, stroke clutch, and the steering, or was it the?
I think it was probably because even though I knew what I really needed to do, it was physically doing it. It was moving. Tony had always said, about like moving at a certain time on a bike when you're weightless against gravity, not fighting gravity and you're not fighting your own weight. There's like a sweet spot, let's say, when you move.
Yeah.
I couldn't find that sweet spot. I was just hanging on for dear life, and I can remember thinking to my brother, "Oh, stop, Kev, stop!"
So some people say that a good passenger, the driver won't feel them move. Is that right?
To a certain extent, yeah. The bike just becomes stable. Yeah.
So that would upset the bike. So could you feel Tony move?
Sometimes just to sort of like you could feel, but I used to sometimes go hurtling into a left-hander, like sliding the bike, with the brakes locked up, and then just expect. I think, well, Tony will get out anyway.
I know there's definitely times in practice when sometimes when you're not quite. I mean that's what it's called, practice as well as time.
Yeah.
And your timing's not quite there. And I definitely remember, I mean, it's strange how these things stick in your mind, but I remember one event, I was a bit lumpy, and I said to Steve afterwards, I said, do you remember that corner, blah, 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 and the bike went a bit funny like that. He says, oh yeah, I wondered what was wrong with it. I said, oh, don't worry, that was just me making a mistake. But then when you come around to the race, you just get into a rhythm.
Right.
And everything, flows and smooth.
Yeah. I remember one story. He was at Donington. This is a good story, this one. And he used to count. He used to get his head down. And instead of like sticking his head up and stuff. And like,
I've heard about this counting.
Yeah. And so he got his head down, back straight, and I got a toe behind Derek Bailey or somebody, and he got to 14.
It was Bruce Ford Dunn.
Yeah.
He was coming past because he was like British champion around that time, and he just came past us, and I sort of looked up and saw him there, and we sort of nodded at each other and put my head down again, but I'd lost rhythm of where we were. I'll let you carry on.
So then I got to the chicane. and he's in here. He's down in Bottom at
Did it?
Sidecar.
Headstand.
Yeah, where Radiator was. Oh, what are you doing there? And you'd lost count, hadn't you? Got his head down, lost count. But
Lost concentration, yeah.
What makes a passenger want to be a passenger?
Well, I feel a bit of a fraud in some respects, because I remember I was more into sport. I'd call myself an all-round, or I was, an all-round sportsman. And my brother, who was a couple of years older than me, he was a biker, full stop.
Right.
And he said to me, I'm going to start sidecar racing. Do you want to be my passenger? And I said, you must be joking. But I only got interested really by going to watch him.
Right.
And I thought, well, yeah, that looks great. But I didn't really I thought I can't really get involved because I'm not into mechanicking.
Right.
It doesn't really turn me on, mechanicking side of it. And it was only when he said, do you and your mate want to borrow my bike and have a go? And this was before licences and medicals. So he's 6 foot, about 6 inches shorter. I borrowed his leathers, put him racing helmet, goggles, and we raced at Elvington.
Right.
Obviously a bit naughty, really, because we weren't even members of the club. And we came last, but we both got off that bike absolutely bouncing. Thought, oh, that was fantastic. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And that was what got me interested then.
Right.
And just a sequence of events after that I finished up with Steve.
Right. Which leads me on to, how did you meet Steve?
Well, I'd taken I'd gone into a bit of a lull, really. I'd been club racing for about 10 years. My brother, I was racing with my brother then. I did start with him for 4 years, and we were trying to get a new engine. And while we were waiting for this engine to arrive, John Evans from our town, who was, funnily enough, he started passenger for my brother, but he started driving himself and was quite successful. And he said, would I ride with him because his passenger had just suddenly retired. So I said, yeah, we'll give it a go, even though he was doing nationals and internationals. Yeah. So it's quite a step up for me. And I finished up racing the whole year with him and enjoyed it, really enjoyed it. Yeah. Did the Southern 100 with him, did Scarborough with him. And he said, would I race with him the following year to do the European Championships? And I'm thinking, wow, here's me, a club rider, doing European Championships. But I thought, well, I can't let my brother down. It's not fair that I just go searching for glory when this engine turns up for next season. Yeah. So he got somebody else. This engine never did arrive, so I was going into retirement, really. I thought, well, that's it. I'll stop. And it was only when Steve had phoned John Evans to ask if he knew anybody who could stand in for Kevin, Steve's brother, who was injured, that I came up and we gave it a go. Wow. And as I said earlier, the first time I met Steve was when he was parked outside my house picking us up for our first race. I never even heard of him. I didn't know who he was.
Steve who?
Nobody did. He'd only been racing for a year as a novice.
Wow.
So, but that, to me, that is part of my pleasure of the journey. Yeah. Is that we started from the bottom together. Yeah. And took the journey. Yeah.
Well, and what a journey.
Yeah. I could have never dreamt it.
Did you have aspirations of world championships, both of you, or either of you?
I think once I had to go at it, it started. Obviously, it was watching Jock Taylor that got me into it, and I just wanted to be like Jock. Yeah. I wanted to be, obviously as a lad, that's, he's my hero. I just wanted to be like, I wanted to be, So it seems a shame I hadn't started a couple of years earlier. Yeah. Because then I might have got a chance to race, race with him, but I never did. But I think,
Mind you, were only about 20, 21, weren't you, when we started? 21,
maybe? 19. I was 19 when I started, so about 21, when me and you got together, And I think, for me, it was, started racing with my brother, and then Kevin fell out at Carnaby after chasing Stevie Abbott and Sean Smith once at one of the Bonanza meetings there. We just went too fast too soon, really. Right. And Kev fell out, broke his leg quite badly, and it was inevitable that he was going to be out for a long time. So it was like the team, my dad, myself, and Kev, like, what we're going to do, you know, if we stop and wait for a year before you write Kev, because his leg was really badly broken and he had to have a pin in it and stuff. So it was like, let's see if we can get, you know, a passenger to just help us out a little bit.
Yeah.
And luckily, Tony sort of agreed to just jump on the side to help us out.
I'll give him a go.
Give us a go, and it was having and I look back now, it was such a big thing for me as a learner to have a passenger who'd had international experience and knew what he was doing, to sit alongside of me and sometimes say, Steve, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Don't go so fast there, and don't do this, and don't, you know, let the bike drift a bit here, let it do, you know. And at first I was a bit, I've got the bloody handlebars, right? Yeah. But then once I started listening to him, and he engineered, he sort of slowed me down, but to go faster. I know it sounds daft, but that's what happened. We you know, I used to get trundling along and go flying into a corner and not really know which gear I was in or where, you know, my lines were all over the place. He probably knew I had enough, you know, I was fast enough, but I just needed smoothing down a little bit. And sort of, and it was Tony's experience and stuff on that, and he was brave enough to sort of say, look, you know, no, don't do that, do this, this and this, and that's what sort of.
And it was in my own interest as well.
Yeah,
you had 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm 10 years older than Steve.
You had 10. How long had you been racing before?
Well, about 10 years.
Well, so
but only at club level, to be
right.
fair.
Yeah, you 10
well,
years
one year at national.
Yeah. Wow.
But long enough to be able to sort of know about when the Sidecar was doing things.
Yeah.
You could say, it's doing that because of this, Steve.
Right.
If you do that, and that'll stop it.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it did. So yeah, it was like a bit of a shortcut for me.
Many passengers have a strict regime, diet and fitness. Was it the same in your day?
Well, I think anybody taking part in anything physical or anything sporting, you've got to take care of your body.
Yeah.
I mean, the Grand Prix, they can last 3/4 of an hour. And say for a passenger, it's all right for the driver, he's just sat there, comfortable. But a passenger, you're going to throw yourself about.
Yeah.
And once you start, you can't get off and have a rest.
No.
Okay, you've got to learn to take a rest when
Yeah.
you can. But it's 3/4 of an hour is a long time to be on it.
Absolutely.
You know, up to 3/4. In fact, I think America was 50 minutes. So yeah, you've got to have a decent standard of
I think
fitness.
what it's like for me, sat at front with somebody who won't sit still on back.
But you look at, I used to look at people like Joey Dunlop and Barry Sheen, and Joey didn't look after himself maybe as well as he should, and Barry Sheen was always flagged as bad. So that's why I kind of hark back your kind of. Did you have a?
I think we used to do quite a bit of training during the week. We used to go to the gym quite a bit, didn't we? We used to go off to Wetherby to a gym, do swimming and gym work and that. And then I think I used to do a lot of, in the winter, do a lot of swimming. So I think that was, you know, especially for the driver, the position you're in with your head up like that and your arms like that, like breaststroke swimming, keeping your head above the water. It was all the same sort of, you're in the same position. So it was like, it used to help with your neck muscles and and around here, because unlike a lot of the lads who have like, you know, they'll have maybe a pad that they rest on in the cockpit, it all used to be on my arms, but I could feel the bike, I could feel what was happening. So I used to, I needed to be quite, at that time I was quite strong in my arms, strong enough to be able to, you know, to hold myself and the bike, and then feel the drift, because it's like almost like wedging yourselves in with your elbows, but then hanging on with your knees as such. But then you could feel what was happening with all the bike. You were like part of it, instead of just being sat in it and with bits of foam everywhere. And the bike would go before you knew it. You were, you know. So, but going back to the fitness side of it all, I think swimming and motocross during the winter, you said sort of like have a motocross bike and go off over the fields where we lived. Knew a couple of the farmers there. Just used to go off and go around and around this track that we'd built until we'd run out of petrol, and then, you know, then go off again. So yeah, big part of it, because we started off the season, I think, in better shape than a lot of especially a lot of the foreign competition, because we'd already had 1 or 2 races, British Championships, because we start earlier. Plus we'd done a lot of work in the winter, and I think we used to catch them on the hop a couple of times. Yeah.
So it's difficult to completely duplicate in exercise for the same muscles that you're using on the bike.
Yeah.
So the best you can do is get the exercise as near as you can.
Yeah.
But if nothing else, for your your energy, your stamina.
Yeah. You were saying earlier that you used to run a couple of British Championship rounds before you went to Laguna Seca, and you felt that benefited you.
I think on our way up, obviously we were learning a lot of things. But once we won the World Championship, and it was then looking for other edges that you obviously to stay there and to keep at the top.
Right.
It wasn't all about just you actually riding and on the track.
Yeah.
There was other things that you could bring into it, to do with your condition, to do with being fitter than them, and also more ready for and more well prepared, as in engine preparation, the team situation.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of other things covered. So it wasn't just a case of jumping on the bike on a weekend and driving a race. There was so much going on behind
it's the whole package, isn't it? You've got to get everything right.
Yeah.
And that that's one bit where Tony was like an expert at, was the keeping the records of all the parts, the engines. I could sort of like build an engine up, because we used to have maybe 4 at that time. We'd maybe have 4 Grand Prix engines that we'd use, and each one had a number, and then for each engine there was maybe 3 sets of crankshafts that we'd use.
Right.
So everything was logged. Tony knew exactly the mileage of everything, how old it was, how many races it had done, and the situation of each engine. So for me, building the engines at the workshop during the week, I knew that Tony, would look at and write everything down, and I could say to him, like later on, like, what engine on 130 was it? And he'd tell me exactly mileage it's done, what cranks it's got in. And I did that, and everything, what cylinders, what set cylinders, has it got A, B, C, D, or E set? Has it got this? And it was like, you had that sort of.
Well, we developed a little book, didn't we? A little notebook. Just kept a record of.
And also
every circuit.
The other thing that we did have, which was such an advantage on the competition for a considerable amount of time, was, as well as like working during the week to build the engines and everything, we could actually more or less carburate the bike with the 2-stroke. We could make it so that the carburation was absolutely exact when we got there to the meeting. Tony used to take some weather readings, relative air density, humidity, or I think temperature, other things, wasn't it? And used to be able to carburate it, because Tony had made a graph of when the bike was really going good at different levels of of pressure, let's say, and then he'd plotted them on a graph, and then worked out a line where basically we could just get these measurements of the weather, and he'd say, you need a 340 main jet in, Steve, put that in, and sure enough he was.
You were saying there was people outside the awning wondering what jet you were putting in.
Are often asked, And if they were friends, I would say, well, we've just gone down a size from last one. But I won't tell them how I did it.
Right.
That was, and it saved a lot of money as well, because obviously the engine, when they blew up, you're talking thousands of pounds worth of problems. And if you got to the stage where you used to have 4 qualifying sessions of an hour each, but if you're using the first 1 or 2 to find the right carburation before you then go on to find the right gearing, and you're up to your last one before you start panicking a bit.
You can't get your gear in until you've got your engine running right.
So we're already, we could basically, with what we had, we could build the bike in the workshop and know exactly what we had the year before, and we could start there exactly the same. And there was no I wonder what we did here, I wonder what we did there. It was like the Bible said, this, this.
Because you were saying, compared to Assen and...
Well, for like, obviously with the air pressure and varies with temperature.
Yeah.
And so you've got like the 2 extremes. You've got Assen, almost down at sea level, say in winter.
Yeah.
So it's cold, down at sea level, dense air.
Yeah.
You need bigger jets.
Right.
More air, more petrol.
Yeah.
The opposite of that was like Salzburg, where you're up in the mountains in the summer, thin air, high up, you need small jets, and then everything in between.
Right.
So there was quite a variation.
Yeah.
So to get it absolutely right before we'd even started the engine was just a good start.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, like I said to you earlier as well, was the Isle of Man, and the difference between the top of the mountain to Douglas had to be And you set it for?
Set it for the richest, make sure you set it for the, so it's going to run rich at a part rather than lean at, you don't want it running lean because it's just going to seize up in it. Or, yeah.
Oh, who was your greatest rival when you were racing?
I think at Grand Prix level, it's Rolf Bielan and Kurt Waltersberg. I think they were they were always the team to try and catch.
Yeah.
At the time, when we had caught them, it was like always the ones that to try and stay in front of, let's say. During our years when we were going up there, it was Stevie Abbott, Sean Smith, and then Derek Bailey, wasn't it? I would say, and there was a few Billings, weren't there as well, Barry Brindley and a few others.
Yeah. But in Grand Prix, there was also, we can't rule out Egbert Stryer.
Yeah.
Because he had actually just won the World Championship 3 years in a row. So the first time we won it, we had to beat somebody who just won it for the last 3 years.
Wow. I know I did ask you this earlier, and you did kind of cover it or touch on it. Did you ever race against Jock Taylor? Or what was he like as a competitor?
Yeah, see, I didn't race against Tony. You raced.
I only raced against him once when I was racing with John Evans up at Knock Hill.
Yeah.
But I couldn't tell you how he was because he'd gone.
Yeah.
we were in another race.
Brilliant.
What did you prefer, GP short circuits or road circuits?
I think from an experience, the Isle of Man, racing at the Isle of Man, I've never experienced in all my other racing years. Let's say I've never experienced anything like the Isle of Man. It was a fantastic sort of feeling going through Kurt Michael flat out on the bikes because you were really you had to be so precise and so right with it. Let's say.
Yeah.
And I do sort of admire anybody that does a TT and does it. The fast lads now. You look and you think, yeah, cracking lads. But it's a different discipline, and I think at the time, for us, we wanted to be world champions. That was our main goal, and the TT was really part of a deal for us to get a start at the Grand Prix because it was what happened was we'd got sponsorship from Dennis Trollope and Fowler Yamaha, and along with that deal, let's say in that package, the ACU wanted lots of people obviously at the TT, as many as they could. They wanted Fowler Yamaha to be there, obviously because Jock had been a big part and a big presence there at the Isle of Man.
Right.
And so Dennis Trollope, bless him, had said, right, okay, we'll bring the team over to the Isle of Man on the condition that you give them a start for the British Grand Prix, because at that time we were still not like club racers.
There's only just one British clubman.
So we were a long way off getting a start really, because at that time you had to be on certain grading lists, and it was like a stepping stone thing. You couldn't just, like you can now, go World Championship racing if you got enough money. You had to actually qualify, and so. But the ACU had said, look, okay, well we'll do that if Fowler Yamaha, Dennis Trollope Racing come to the Isle of Man, we'll make sure you get a start on a grading list. We were on something like, they put us on grading list 5, didn't they? Which was like somebody
off the charts, really. Yeah.
So anyway, but it's enough for us to get a start, and that was the deal. So, that's why
we had like a wild card, entry.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, now when I look back, we took the wrong bike. And,
Yeah, that's what Tim mentioned in one of his questions. He said, would you have preferred to go back and compete on a
conventional bike? Yeah. I think if we'd have taken our
at
short
time.
bike, at the time, if we'd have taken the short bike, I dare say I'd have probably carried on going, because I'd have enjoyed. We'd have enjoyed it more.
Yeah.
We obviously wouldn't have crashed. Wouldn't have spent night in hospital. Yeah. We wouldn't have hurt. I mean, it virtually nearly killed us, didn't it, that bike? So it, if we'd have gone with the right bike, I think we would have. I'd have enjoyed it more. I would have probably carried on more going to the Isle of Man. But in another way, having that accident there, it was enough of a show, let's say, to say, look, Steve, you can't do both.
Yeah.
You cannot win a world championship and concentrate on that and do the TT and other road, at that time, because there was something like 14 races a year or something, so it was a busy year.
Wow.
And to do that, obviously, it was 100% committed in all sorts of different areas to get the machine right, to get enough money to do it. to make sure Tony had the time off work, because that was another thing. It was like, you know, the more and more races we were running on, it was like, Tony, do you think you better get
to
out?
Keep going to my boss.
Wednesday night, and which we were lucky in a way, because you had an understanding boss, but we could only push that to a certain level. We didn't want to go too far, because we didn't want Tony to lose his job, because you know, at that time.
But then it all came in our very last year, because there was actually talk of us going to Australia. I mean, you maybe went since, but there was talk of us going, and I'm thinking, I'm getting towards the end of my career now. I want to make the most of whatever opportunities come up.
Yeah.
So I asked for a bit extra to my boss. I think I'd normally ask for 12 weeks of leave, or 10 weeks, but this time I asked him for 12.
Right.
And he called me into his office, and he says, I haven't heard from you about this. There's a reorganisation going on. And I said, well, I was waiting to hear what he said about my application for 12 weeks of unpaid leave. And he called me into his office, and he says, yes, you can have it, you're all right, you can have it, but what are you doing about your normal family's holiday? I said, well, they usually come with us, you know. He said, oh, no, you've got to take them on a holiday as well. I'll give you another 4.
Wow.
So I actually had 16 weeks.
Wow.
And paid this time.
Wow.
He said, I'll give you it paid.
Fantastic.
I thought, wow. And that was my last year.
He was a good understanding.
But I got him a ticket to the British Grand Prix the year before.
Yeah.
And so he came, and we had the Browns group with the bus there, and hospitality. There was Silk Lane with their hospitality. And they were just drifting between our hospitalities and throwing it back. And then we won. So, you know, I couldn't do anything wrong after that.
Brilliant.
You really enjoyed it.
Did you race at the Southern 100?
We did, didn't we?
Yeah, we broke the lap record, didn't we?
Yeah, we finished second. I remember Tony Baker beat us. We had a right race with Tony Baker.
Tony Baker?
Yeah, it was a proper race as well. It was a real good dogfight. It was really good. And
there was a bit more to it, but we won't go into that.
But we finished second, and he beat us, but we got the lap record, and it stood for years.
Yeah.
It was I forget how many years it was, but it did stand for a long time.
Another legend broke it, and I have it written down on my notes.
Was it Nick Crowe?
Molyneux.
Dave Molyneux.
Dave Molyneux.
Yeah.
So you have done the roads.
Yeah. I used to do some. There's a few. I mean, Aston was a road circuit basically. It was.
Of course it was.
Yeah. I mean, when we went in the ditch, if we'd have gone another 30 foot further on, there was all the stop signs and things all in there, weren't there? Would have been impaled.
Yeah. Scaffolding and all
Scaffolding bits and stuff everywhere. See, I didn't take you too far into the ditch, did I?
Do you think sidecar racing gets the attention from the media it deserves?
No, I don't know. When you look at now with Todd and Emmanuel, they've won the World Championship, and Emmanuel's French, she had a lot more publicity, I think, in France, and probably Todd's got maybe this year. I haven't seen a lot. I've not been bombarded with stuff about them winning and everything, and it seems just such a shame that probably Todd's come home, and he like said earlier, won't be fighting sponsors away from his back door. He won't all be queuing up to, and it's such a shame, because you still have to put that same amount of effort in as what we did in the past.
Yeah.
And to watch them and to see how they've done it, and how nicely they've done it.
Absolutely.
In a good way, and the bike always looks spot on.
Absolutely pristine.
And you'll go to the meeting, and Emmanuel will be there. She'll be cleaning all the tyres and working. And it's like she's not just I'm just a princess passenger or whatever.
No.
Nah, she's in there. She's getting her hands dirty.
Yeah.
And it's just, Gary does the engines. Another part of the family is doing the engines. It's a good package and a good team, and that's what it's all about. It's not just about a rider and passenger being good. You need all those people around you as well.
Very much so.
To make it a good team.